In this episode, Golden and I discuss Godzilla vs. Kong. Full speed ahead.
The Omega Beam. Full power.
Welcome to the Omega Beam number 121. I'm your host, Oren Merton. If you love kaiju movies, you know that last week Warner Brothers released Godzilla vs. Kong, both in theaters and streaming on HBO Max. So, as we've been doing with big movies, we start out with a spoiler-free discussion of the film, and then we'll give you ample warning before we get all spoilerific. So if you've seen it or not, you're covered. All right, let's go. I am here with Golden to talk about Godzilla vs. Kong. So I figured we'd start spoiler-free, and then we'd get into the full spoilers after a bit. So this is the next movie in kind of the kaiju saga, the Godzilla saga, that began... Well, in the timeline, it began with Skull Island, and then Godzilla King of the Monsters, and now Godzilla vs. Kong.
For me, it started with Godzilla, because I saw Godzilla before seeing Kong Island.
Yeah.
Not Kong Island, Skull Island.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I saw Godzilla and Godzilla King of the Monsters before Skull Island, and I really liked Skull Island. I really enjoyed Godzilla. Godzilla King of the Monsters, it was fine. But I have to say, first of all, this is worlds of improvement over Godzilla King of the Monsters. But I thought this was legitimately good.
Legitimately good?
Well, because I think one of the things that you can run into with big kaiju movies is that they know, a lot of us, we're just there to see huge, monstrous beasts punch each other. And as long as they give us that, we're not going to be dissatisfied. So that is actually why I was slightly dissatisfied with Godzilla King of the Monsters, because I'm actually okay with lots of kaiju fighting and a sort of disjointed plot that just ties the scenes together, as long as there aren't very many of those disjointed scenes that tie the movie together. And it's really mostly just watching the kaiju fight. But Godzilla King of the Monsters, I think, was even more of the disjointed story than actually watching the kaiju fight. In this one, I think they got the balance right.
Okay.
There was a lot of kaiju punchy, which, that's what I'm here for. You don't go to see Godzilla vs. Kong because you wanted Shakespearean family drama. You go for the kaiju punchy. And it was what I had hoped it would be. There weren't nearly as many scenes of human story.
Yeah, I'd be very curious how many pages of dialogue there actually is in the screenplay.
Probably a few.
Probably a lot less. And
yeah.
I know at one point during the movie you were like, well, this is going to do really well among, non-English audiences as well, because you don't really need most of the dialogue.
Yeah, and it takes place in Asia. A lot of it takes place in Asia, so it's automatically more interesting to a Southeast Asian audience because it's in their backyard instead of so many of these movies, everything takes place in the United States. So, yeah, I think this will do very well overseas.
And you have, different stories all coming together,
mm-hmm.
which is nice.
Yep.
I kind of felt like the character of Nathan Lind is kind of being pushed towards being like the bad guy at one point, but he's got genuine good intentions.
Yeah. I would agree. I think that it's not so much that he was set up to be the bad guy, but that he's just clearly
manipulated.
Yeah, he's not an alpha male. He's not, I'm the big guy with the big ideas. It's like the big guys with the big ideas are using him. And because of that, you kind of get the feeling that he might do some things that we don't like, that I'm being obviously vague to keep it the spoiler-free part. But I do think that, like you were saying, they did a good job with those different stories that they wove between the kaiju punchy, to the point that, unlike Godzilla King of the Monsters, when the kaiju fights were done and you were like, okay, come on, yes, fine, be done with this. Let's just get to the next fight. In this one, I found myself actually wanting to watch the story that was happening between the kaiju fights because it was a real story.
Yeah, I'd like to say more, which is going to be spoilers, so...
Yeah, so we'll probably end the spoiler-free part pretty quickly at this point. Just, if you haven't seen it...
It is not just a go watch some kaiju fight movie.
Yeah.
There is a pretty nice story that goes along with it.
Exactly. If you were wondering, if you generally like this...
It's got some foundation.
Yeah, if you like this kind of movie but just don't want to be disappointed by a bad version of it, you are safe. This is a really good version. I mean, this movie has gotten surprisingly good Rotten Tomatoes aggregate scores, and I get it, because the kaiju fighting is exactly as good as you'd want it to be, and the story itself has merit. So, if you like this kind of stuff, you will like this version of it. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Spoilers.
So you're talking about the fights and how at one of the very first fights between Godzilla and Kong, Godzilla pulls Kong into the water.
Yeah.
Because he understands the easiest way to defeat Kong is to drown him.
Right.
And I like the fact that it's not just empty-headed monster, big, strong, I'm going to hit you, you hit me. But there's some thought into, how do I attack this other creature?
Yeah, exactly. I quip that it's kaiju punchy, but in fact, they do a really good job of making each creature seem like a living being that has developed instinct, fighting style. It has an understanding of its opponent, of its own strengths.
Not that all of them are super smart. It's just...
Right, but these two are the king of the hill, and they are. So I thought they did that really well, making them seem like really formidable opponents for each other.
Not just for each other.
I
mean, you get to the end and you have Mecha Godzilla, who I think right before the operator got fried, you're like, I bet the operator's going to get fried.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, come on. You knew that Mecha Godzilla was going to go evil. You knew it was going to happen. It was destiny. It's just, you can't have Mecha Godzilla.
Well, we originally said when we first saw the first preview or heard that they were making a Godzilla versus Kong, we were both like, well, they've got to team up.
Of course.
They've got to team up.
They got to team up because they're both champions of humanity. That ultimately, no matter how much they hate each other, one of the things that binds them is that they both consider themselves protectors of humans. And I think that the movie does a really good job in giving both kaiju kind of a young human female that it wants to protect.
I like this protector of humanity theme too with them. Yeah, no, it's the little girl was absolutely precious.
She was fantastic.
She did an excellent job. Kaylee Hoddle. And reading her bio on IMDb, she comes from generations of deaf people and her family's deaf, and I don't know if all of them are, but I like the fact that they hired someone who was deaf for a deaf character.
Yeah, it gives what could be a very cliche character a real heart and soul that I think plays into the movie, and it obviously is there to humanize Kong, but instead it's a much richer, I think, characterization of the relationship between Kong and humanity. And I think Millie Bobby Brown, who's of course an older actress and been in the previous one. And,
older than her.
Right. Older than the deaf girl. She also plays just sort of the human example of someone who understands Godzilla and understands that no matter how much Godzilla is being made out to be a villain in this situation, something is provoking him, and he's absolutely not.
She just pulls her friend Josh along.
Right.
Hey, come on. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ends up anything but fine. Well, until the end.
Right. Famous last words, it'll be fine. One of the other things that, speaking of the story, that I thought was nice about this one, back when the whole Godzilla factory, the whole cottage industry of Godzilla and monster kaiju movies was first made in the 50s and the 60s, Godzilla was an allegory for the nuclear experimentation and the dangers of American nuclear tests and everything else. And it was just a fun, monster story, but at the same time, there was a root to it. And I think they kind of went back to that with this one because, we were talking about Mecha Godzilla and going evil, going insane. But I think that's the point, that even from the very beginning, we get the idea that the Apex Corporation is up to no good, and that's why.
As soon as Godzilla attacks, you're like, okay, they're up to something.
Right. And so it kind of harkened back, instead of just, hey, let's make a punchy movie because it's going to sell tickets. Instead, they did it with that, that old school moral in mind, that technical advances without morality, without testing, can lead to, horrible disaster. I liked the fact that it had sort of a point behind it besides, hey, isn't it fun to watch these, CG monsters beat each other up?
Yeah.
And, speaking of the story, it certainly wasn't perfect, but I think with any movie like this, especially those of us who like this kind of movie, we are very willing to let things go. I even pointed out when we were watching it, time is a very sometimes thing here, that you have our Millie Bobby Brown, the Godzilla thread of the story. Our heroes take basically an underwater high-speed monorail from somewhere in the West Coast to Hong Kong, and it's supposed to be just a few hours or something. But then Millie Bobby Brown's dad takes a jet and ends up in Hong Kong, and the same amount of time. I guess it's some kind of super high-speed jet, and then King Kong climbs with, basically just an axe for his climbing tool. He climbs from the center of the earth to Hong Kong in what seems like a matter of minutes. So time is kind of...
Well, he was falling through the tunnel and then it reversed.
Yeah, that's true. He didn't have to climb the whole way, that there was sort of a high speed ray of life force. Look, don't read into it. It is what it is.
Gravity had to reverse.
Yeah, gravity reversed.
I think it's absolutely funny. I'm okay with the fact that you go to the center of the earth, there's gravity reversing and all of that, and somehow you have green plants that don't need sun and all of that.
Sure.
But I have a problem with the fact that there's a manufactured door and architecture in the throne room.
Yeah. Yeah. It is funny with these kind of movies.
It's funny what things you get stuck on.
Yeah.
I'm like, how, if you go through that door, if you wanted to leave and close the door, there's no way to close it from the outside. There's no handles. And who the heck made the door?
Right.
Did Kong's ancestors really have the ability to make those doors?
Someone must have, because even the axe that Kong was using was obviously made. I mean, the blade was roped together to the handle.
I can believe the ancestors made that.
So yeah, must have been somebody. Who knows? Maybe in a future movie we'll find out who actually lives down there in the center of the earth.
It's kind of,
For all we're laughing at the inconsistencies of the story, like we said, it does hold together. I mean, it is actually a good story.
It is a kaiju movie.
Yeah, you just don't get hung up.
It's more than just, oh, look, there's a kaiju. Oh, look, there's another kaiju. They are going to attack. They will fight. Story over. Yeah, it's a lot more than that, which
Yeah.
is, I mean, I really like the fact that you have the different triplets. You have the Bernie, Josh, and Madison, and they're having their little adventure.
Right, the Godzilla thread.
Yeah, the Godzilla thread. Then you have the Nathan Lind, Andrews, and Gia. You have that little thread with Kong.
Right, the Kong
You have
thread.
it's like these little triplets
Right,
that are just coming together.
right. And speaking of coming together, they aren't actually in the same frame until the very, very end. But it's done very well, and it makes sense in story, and it's not like we don't know each other, but we're friends. They're not. They don't even know that they're in the same frame together, but we do.
Yeah, and I mean, I joked with you about the fact that, Madison ends up in Hong Kong, and then her dad gets called to Hong Kong, and it was like, I can't remember what my comment was. Hey, Dad, yeah, no, I'm already here. I'll see you when you get here.
Yeah.
I'll explain later.
Right. Right, exactly. But you know what? The story holds together, and it holds the kaiju scenes together. I think that in a movie like this, that's all they need to do. I mean, they need to give you enough story to keep you engrossed. And it did.
I mean, for the most part, Godzilla won between Kong and him.
Right.
I mean,
Well, yeah.
He did have Kong down.
I think what we're supposed to get out of it is that one-on-one, Godzilla is the bigger, the stronger, the more powerful kaiju. However, Kong's number one, tool use, and number two, because Mecha Godzilla is stronger than Godzilla, that the two together are much more.
Well, we are stronger together.
We are stronger together, and I think this is I think they did it really well because these are not two natural allies. You've basically got an aquatic reptile and a mammal, a huge great ape, and they're not natural allies, and yet they're both smart enough and they're both devoted to humanity enough that they were willing to put their differences aside to fight the real evil, which is technology run amok. And it kind of just made the great CG battles and everything else, it gave it like a nice theme and a nice overall message.
I did like, when Mechagodzilla is coming to life and they're just backing away and our, bad guy is monologuing.
Yeah. Well, that's what you get for monologuing instead of actually watching what you're doing. But yeah, it had amusing moments, and it had some of the dialogue was a bit quippy. I got a little bored, I guess, by the one character, the podcaster, who was just
Bernie?
Yeah,
I think it was
Bernie. Bernie, played by Brian Tyree Henry, who...
I liked him.
He's a good actor, and I think he did a good job with the character, but the fact that he was, always quipping and bumbling, I thought, after a while, it'd be like, okay, I get it now. You can tone it down a bit.
It's just kind of like his personality, and I thought it went really well with him, with the two kids. Yeah, they're the adventurers going along with Godzilla. They're the investigators.
Right.
And then you have basically the heart.
Right.
I think that the other team was kind of the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because Alexander Skarsgård is in it for his brother. And to kind of redeem what his brother was doing or died doing.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I wouldn't say that this is Shakespeare, so if you're looking for a great movie about the human condition, you probably weren't looking at Godzilla vs. Kong to begin with. But if you want to be entertained by a kaiju movie that is not just well done, but actually has some heart and soul behind it, I think you're really going to like this one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/121. If you like this episode, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. It's your reviews that help people who like this stuff find our podcast. If you have any comments, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.
The Omega Beam. Full stop.